Hey guys, welcome back to part 3 of Endless Runner game tutorial series in Unreal Engine. And from this part we're gonna start working on character movement system like high jump, rolling and side jumps to change the lane. And you can also download this whole project from my Patreon, so you don't have to make the whole game yourself. The link is in the description. So at this point of time, we do have all the animations we need, like the jump animation, roll animation and side jump animation. But if we play, we can't actually do anything except of running. So now we need to implement the character movements. So for that, go to your character blueprint, and here you can see it's pretty much empty. So this is where we are going to write all the logics about the movement. So first of all, let's get the W key input. There it is. So when you press the W key, this will get trigger, and this input is just for the testing purpose. The proper way of setting up inputs will be through input actions and mappings, but we are just gonna use this for now. Later on we are going to switch on the input actions. So when we press W, we're gonna jump. So for that, let's create a separate custom event. Let's name this high jump. And we are going to call this event when we press W. So on press, just call this event. And now we are gonna write jump logic inside this custom event. So first let's create a variable. Let's name this is jumping. Make sure it's a boolean. So when we jump, we are gonna set this boolean to true so that we will know that our character is jumping. Now what we are going to do, here you can see we have these 3 jump animations. So let's just pick up any one of them for the testing, and make sure you have created the animation montage. If you haven't, you can create it from here. Now to play the animation montage, just search for play anim montage. Here it is. And here you need to select the animation montage you want to play. We have 3 of them, but just for now we are gonna choose any one of them. There you go. You can also select manually like this. Now if we press W, it is going to call this event and it is going to play this animation. So now let's play and see how it works till now. As you can see, I'm pressing W and of course it's only playing the animation. We still need to add height movement. So for that, I'm gonna add timeline. There it is. Let's name this jump timeline. And play it from start every time you call this event. Now open this timeline, and here let's add a float track. Let's name this jump track. Now this timeline will be responsible for changing the Z location value of our character. Means how much high or low our character is going to jump. Now let's right click and add a float key. Give it the time and value both 0, since we are going to start from the Z location 0. Now let's add another float key and let's give it the time around 0.2 seconds, and after 0.2 seconds I wanna give a character the height of 150. Now these value will represent this Z location of our character, and more the value, higher our character is going to jump. Now when our character reaches the height of 150 after 0.2 seconds, then the character will float in the air for a while, for about let's say 0.7 seconds. Let's add a float point here. And after that, the character gonna fall off. So let's add a float key and give it the value of 0 at time around 0.95. Now to end this timeline, you can either use the last keyframe, so it will automatically end at the last keyframe, or you can manually adjust the length of the timeline. Now we need to make some curves through these points so that the jumping movement will be smooth. So just right click on the point and select the user. And now you can make curves through these lines. Do the same for another point. Now you can try to make it as smooth as possible, and also right click on the starting point and change it to auto, so you can start jumping more smoothly. Let's just keep the curve straight for this, so the jump will start slowly. So I have adjusted these points a little bit. Now let's go back to event graph. Now here in the timeline, this is what going to give us the output of these curves value, and we are gonna use this to set the Z location of our character. Now let's get the capsule component and let's set its relative location. And while every frame this timeline is running, we are going to set the Z location of this component. So for that, right click and split the structure so we can get each axis separately. And since we only want to change the Z value, the X and Y should remain the same. So get the relative location of the capsule component, then split the structure and connect X to X, Y to Y, and for the Z, we are gonna use the jump track. But using this value directly can cause issues because we need to add the Z location on the current one. So it wouldn't just snap if values doesn't align with the timeline. So we are gonna add this value on the current Z location. And how we gonna get that? So before even this timeline start, we are going to store the player's current Z location. So let's create a variable. Let's name this current Z location and make sure it's a float. Let's set this variable here, and to get the current Z location, we are going to get the capsule component's relative location and plug its Z location to store in this variable. Now you can plug this current Z location variable here to add it with the timeline value, and this added value is going to be our character's jump height. Now let's play and test this. So now when I press W, you can see our character jumps. And the landing seems too smooth to be realistic, so we also have to adjust that. But before that, if you move these 2 points a little bit high, it is going to affect our character's jump height. So now if I jump, you can see our character jumps way too high. So you can customize your character's movement very easily through these timelines however you want. But now I'm just gonna edit this timeline a little bit more to get the result that I expect. So now it looks pretty good, but there is still some problem with this jump movement. Like if I spam the W button, it is just keep adding the height to a character jump. To fix this, we can add a condition here before we call this jump event. So as you can see, we have this isJumping variable set to true when we start jumping. So when isJumping boolean is not true, then only we can call this jump event. And when the jump timeline finishes, we are going to set isJumping to false. So this is how we are going to restrict the input spam. So now if I try to spam the key, it only jumps when the timeline finishes. Now here we are playing this jump animation, but we also have these 2 more jump animations. So what we can do is, we can randomize between 3 of these jump animations. So there will be different jump animation every time a character jumps. So for that, let's get random integer in range. Here it is, and here set the max value to 2. So we will get random integer of minimum 0 to max 2. Now search for switch on end. And let's add pins 3 times. So based on what value we get, that particular execution pin will be fired. Now let's shift these nodes a little bit and connect this here. So if the random integer is 0, then this code will be fired where it will play this animation montage. So let's play different animation for each random number, where we are gonna play this animation if the random number is 1. Make sure you have selected it. Now if the random number is 2, then we are going to play this animation, which is the last one right here, and make sure to connect the pins. So now let's play and test this. So every time we jump, as you can see, it's playing the random animations. So it's working great till now. So as of now, we only have the W input for the character's jump movement. Now let's add some more. So we are gonna add the A key, and then we are gonna add the D key. There you go, and both these inputs are gonna call a custom event, which we are going to create here. Let's name this side movement, and here we are also gonna add an input parameter. Make sure it's a float, and let's name this axis. Now this event will be responsible for the side movements of a character, and we are going to call this event when we press the A key and the D key. If you ever get this error, you can easily fix it by refreshing the node. So now when we press the A key, we are going to tell it to move in the negative axis, which will be our left direction, and on D key, give it the axis value of +1. Now the exact reason we did this, because if you let's say move your character in the left direction, here you can see how the location changes into negative direction, while if you move your character to the right direction, the value is going to be positive, and we can use that to differentiate in which direction we want to move our character. Now more on that later on. First, let's create a variable. Let's name this side jump and make sure it's a boolean. Then set this boolean to true when we call this event, so that we'll know we are currently side jumping. And just after that, let's add a timeline. Let's name this side jump timeline and play it from start. Double click to open the timeline, and here let's add a vector track. Now we chose vector track because now we want to work on multiple axes, because we want a side jump to change the lane, and at the same time we want our character to jump a little bit, so that's why. Now first of all, we are going to set the points for only y-axis. So let's lock x and y. Now right click and add a key for y-axis. Set their time and value 0 initially. Now add another key point and this time set the time to 0.5 and value to 200. Now you can select this option so the timeline will end at the last keyframe automatically, or you can manually adjust the length of the timeline. Now you can break this vector track to get each axis value separately. Here we want the y value for now, so while updating the timeline, we can set our character's location. So get the capsule component and this time set world location. Yeah, the world location. Because we are changing lanes, so it's more appropriate to change world location. Now we're gonna keep the x and z axis the same. So get the capsule's world location, split the structure, same for this node, and then connect x to x and y to y, since we only want to change the y-axis value for now. Now don't just use the timeline value directly, since we are gonna multiply it first, and we are gonna multiply it with this axis parameter. Now why we did that? So since I explained you before, the left moment have the -1 value and the right moment have the +1 value for this parameter. And since it's multiplying with the y value, it is going to influence the y value to become negative or remain positive based on the axis value. So let's play and test. So as you can see, it does work technically, like it's changing the lane, but it always starts from the middle lane, since we haven't introduced the concept of lane yet. So we need to update the current lane, so the player should know on what lane it currently is, so that he can move from that current lane instead of middle lane every time. So for that, let's create a new variable. Let's name this current lane and make sure it's an integer. Now we are going to update this current lane value when we finishes this timeline. Let's compile, and here let's set the default value of current lane to 1, and that is because this middle lane is going to be 1, this left lane is going to be 0, and this right lane is going to be 2, because this way it's easier to handle values while coding. Now based on where we moved, we are going to add or subtract the lane value. So here let's check if this axis value is less than 0, that means it's -1, and that also means we have moved left. So in that case, we are going to subtract the lane value by 1. So for that, let's first get the current lane and get an addition operator and plug it here. Now we are going to either subtract 1 or add 1 in the current lane based on where we move. So here, just to avoid the branch, we can use this select node and here plug this return value to addition operator. Now based on if this condition is true or false, we can give it the value for each condition, like return -1 if the condition is true or 1 if the condition is false. So that value will be added and that will set our current lane value. So this is how we are going to update the current lane value. Also set this side jump boolean to false when the timeline finishes. Now it was just about updating the value inside the variable, but now here we have to make some changes to make character change the lane based on this variable value. So here let's add an add operator before we multiply this value. Now here we wanna add the value we wanna move based on the current lane. So get the current lane and get the select node. And let's add 3 pins since we have 3 lanes. Now if the lane value is 0, that means we already have the left lane, so we just wanna add 200 to shift in the middle lane. And on option 1 keep it 0. Then if the lane value is 2, we wanna subtract -2. So then it will add to y value, then multiply to axis and set the world location. One thing to correct here is to set this value to also negative, because of this axis value, the negative will eventually get positive. Now let's also print the lane value to see how it's actually going. So let's play. As you can see, when I'm changing the lane, it's changing the character position from the current lane instead of the middle lane. And on the top left, the lane count is also going like it should be. But there is one issue with this. If we try to go beyond the third lane, the game glitch out and the values also go beyond the limitation. So we can easily fix that just by adding condition before changing the lane. So the condition is going to be that the current lane should be greater than 0. Now we are going to attach one more condition with it using AND operator, and the other condition is that the side jump boolean should not be true. This condition is just to avoid any input spam. Now to change the lane to right, the condition is that the current lane value must be smaller than 2 and side jump should not be true. Now when we press A, we are going to play a side jump animation. Here you can see we have one for left jump and another for right jump. So based on what key we press, we are going to play the animation. So here play anim montage. And here select the appropriate animation for this key. So for the A key, we are gonna play this left jump animation. So select that animation here, and the similar way for the D key, select this right jump animation. Make sure you have selected it, and now let's compile and test this. So let's go left, and as you can see, the animation is working great. And also, I cannot go beyond the limitation of the lanes. So the lane limitation is also working. But now we need to add a slight height jump when the player jumps to the another lane. So for that, open this timeline, and now we are gonna set value for the Z axis. So let's lock X and Y axis, and let's add a Z key point. Initially give it the time and value 0. Then add another one, and let's give this one time of 0.2, and you can give it any value you want or that suits your animation. I'm gonna keep it around 99. Also right click and select user, so you can actually bend the curve to make the movement more smooth. Then add another Z key, then again right click and make it user, and give it the time of 0.5 and value back to 0 since we are gonna land back on the ground. Just make sure all the key points ends at the same time. And also you can adjust the curve to make the jump smoother. Now let's compile. Let's go back to our event graph. Now from here you can access your timeline Z value. Now to make the player jump a little bit, we are going to set the relative location of the capsule component. Relative location because we wanna make the player jump in its local space, because that's more convenient. And just like before, we wanna keep the X and Y axis the same. So split the structure and connect X to X and Y to Y. Now for the Z, we are gonna use the timeline's Z value, but not directly. We are going to add the current Z location on this timeline's Z value. So just like before, we are going to set the current Z value before the timeline starts. And here we are gonna add it with the timeline value. So now let's play and test this. So now as we go right or left, our player jumps a little bit along while moving the side, and it's looking great. And also you can customize the height or any movement by these timelines, so feel free to experiment with these values. Now there's one thing to notice. So when the player lands after jumping, you can see it takes some time to switch back to running. So let's try to fix that. So here let's get a event on landed. So this event fires when a player lands on the ground. So one way to instantly switch from animation montage to normal animation is by using set animation mode. Here you can tell it to use animation blueprint as soon as your character lands. Also let's print a string so that we'll know this event is being called. So now when we lands after jump, you can see it instantly switched to running animation, but we wanna switch smoothly. So let's delete this one, and here we're gonna play a little trick here. We're going to play montage when a player lands. This is a different kind of play animation montage node since we get a lot of options here, and specifically we need this one. Now when we land, what animation we are gonna play? So get current montage and plug it here. Now we are gonna play the already playing montage and start playing it from its ending. And since we know montage automatically blends out the animation, it's gonna create a smooth transition effect between animations. Now how we are going to get the ending position of any animation? So when we play the animation montage, here you see there is this return node which returns the length of the animation. And how long the animation is, that number is the last point of any animation timeline. So first we are going to store the length of any animation we play. So for that let's create a variable, and we're gonna name this anim length and make sure it's a float. So let's set it after we play the animation and store the length of the animation. Do it for the right jump also, and we are also gonna do the same thing for the high jump since what we did on landed is also going to affect the high jump. So just store the animation length into this variable. Now once you are done with this, you have to use this animation length as the starting position here. And now it will smoothly blend out the animation. So let's play and test this. So as you can see, when I side jump, it smoothly transitioned back to running after the player lands on the ground. And now the movement system is really smooth. So now we are only left with the rolling movement, which we will cover in the next part. So that is it for this part of this tutorial series. If you really like this video, you can support me on Patreon, where you can get all the project files I've ever created for these tutorial videos. The link is in the description. And you can also join my Discord server, where you can interact with other developers of this community. And if this video really helped you out, you can like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I wanna thank the Patreon members of this month. Thank you so much for your support, it means a lot. Alright, till then, see you, bye bye.